Okay, we're here. So what I'm doing here today is basically a follow-up from the live cast that I did with Richard on the first layer yesterday. We did a brief overview on how to create a, sorry, not used to the scanner, the camera here. It's not showing up the way I thought it would. All right, how to be able to create a head like this. I'm doing it so that it's full size so we can do cosplay templates and stuff based off of it. And it's actually pretty darn simple to really get through on this stuff. So to jump into that, what we are going to do is we're going to take a look, and a few of these questions I'm going to try to stay on top of them, but because I'm just a one-man show here, it's going to be kind of difficult. So be patient with me. Streaming engine, I'm using restream.io, and I guess Jeff's retired now. Oh, he's retired from Cat. Well, yeah, but his attitude hasn't retired yet. So let's actually cover what I am here to do in the first place. So we're going to go on to a screen capture here, and I'm going to show you the 3D model very briefly of what we did with Richard. And we're going to use Meshmixer to come in and deal with everything there. But what I want to show you is how we got it. So what I use, and keep in mind that this isn't something for high finesse or high detail. This is going to get some generic shapes. So plus or minus 1/8 of an inch, maybe less, maybe more, depending on how much time you spend on creating the scan. But for the most part, you get, what I have here is we've got the SkinX software, and you can get, it's good for Mac or PC, and you can get it for free to try out, but it's limited to how many polygons it makes, and basically what that comes down to is how many triangles it'll make. But it's inexpensive. Let's see, get SkinX, so $129 US, super worth the money. Now I've had this for 3 years, and it's one of the most powerful little things that I have. So what I use to actually scan stuff is that, we'll go down to my top down, is that I have an Xbox 360 scanner. What do you call it? Not a scanner, I can't remember. The Xbox 360 Connect bar. There we go. Now you can buy these for about $20 off of eBay or Kijiji or Craigslist. Find a second-hand place. And you're also going to need to get a power adapter and USB adapter, because the USB here that they have, of course, is proprietary, and it's got a little notch on it, and it's not going to work properly. So you end up just buying these two things, and that works out to about, I think, $40 worth of stuff. Now, we'll go back to the screen capture, just so you guys know, I did a quick search on eBay, and you can find Connects for like $20. There's 30, 21, 14. They don't have to be in good shape. In fact, you'll notice that I've taken the base and I've knocked it off so that it's just not something I have to deal with, and made it so that I can hold it a little easier by hand. And then you can go to Amazon, or you can find out on eBay, is these Connect Sensor USB AC power adapter, blah, blah, blah. Basically, you plug it into the wall, you plug it into your computer, and then it will interact with the SkinX software. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you a quick video clip of what Richard and I were doing a week or so ago. And what I'm doing here is I got a little 50 millimeter by 50 millimeter square foam core board. Now I put that on the person just by the neck or somewhere outside of the scan that I'm not going to be printing. And what that does is it gives me a registration, or something that I can make sure that the scale of the model is correct. Now, when you come in through the SkinX software, it works out very well, and I didn't have to do any adjustment for the scale, but it's always good to have that. So what we've done is we've taken Richard, put him a certain distance from the SkinX camera, and you can see that it's the right distance by everything is green on the software. Now, I just do a slow rotation, really just at about eye height, And then we do a couple more rotations where you hold the camera up and he rotates around, and then down low so that you get behind the ears and under the nose and all that sort of stuff. One trick that I do with this is that it's always best to start at the back of the head. When you try to start at the front of the head, it rarely works very well because it's trying to knit a bunch of stuff through the nose and everything versus like a nice round sort of back edge of the head. So that was just a really quick overview on how the scan was done. It's really simple. Couldn't recommend it more. If you have an old Xbox 360, just grab the bar, download the free version of Skinect, and then give it a try and see how things go. So we've gotten to the point where we have a scan. So let's just go back to my screen capture. So we've got the screen capture, and this is what we got. Now, once you're in here, you'll notice at the top you have the record, which is where you actually do the scan. There's prepare at the very beginning, and this will let you choose the size that you're gonna scan. So you can do sort of like a 1/2 meter box, a 1 meter box, a 2 meter box. But we've already gone through that, and a lot of the tutorials that they have on Skinect will get you through this. Like I learned how to use this on my own in about 15 or 20 minutes. So the next tab that you have up here is process. And this is the one where Brian is where you can start getting rid of some of the stuff you don't need. You can notice that the scan itself has some sort of bad data inside here. You don't want any of this stuff. So what you can do is you can come in and you go to geometry and remove parts. Now, just so you know, I don't spend an awful lot of time in Skinect. I'm familiar with things like Meshmixer, MeshLab, and that's what I prefer to use, but that doesn't mean that you can't do some of the raw processing here. And this is one of the things that I do, is I'll come in here and you remove the parts. Now, we really only want the head and the shoulders, so we can take this down quite a bit. So basically what it's going to do is remove parts smaller than a percentage of the biggest part or a biggest model part. Okay, so I'm going to hit run. I see Jeff's got to go back to work, so thanks for showing up, and thanks, Jeff, and we'll see you in a bit. Now, what we have here is once we've gone through, we've gotten rid of a lot of those extra parts, right? And once you've done that, you can come in here and you hit share, and you can save the Skinect file format, but you can also export the model. And when you export the model, you know, we'd want to export it in an STL and OBJ. And there are some of these that actually do have texture and stuff. So I'm just going to go right back a little bit to reconstruct. Maybe it's in process. So you can hit colorize. And I'm not sure if all the data is still here because I've moved from one computer to the next. But it will take the photographs of Richard that were there. There we go. So now it'll give you a much better scan as far as like something that's a little more realistic. And if you want to do a 3D print of this with the texture, you can do that, but only when you export in an OBJ type file or PLY. I like working with STL. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to close down Skinect because that is sort of my first little bit on what to do or how to get the models processed. So then what I do is I open up Autodesk Meshmixer and I hit import, and we're going to go to here. We'll go to Richard's head and the original raw STL that I got from the Skinect software. And then this one didn't actually have any of the triangles and stuff removed, so you can still see some of the garbage in here. But there are ways in Meshmixer to get rid of that. But there's sort of an order of operations. And I think the best way to think about this is that what are sort of like the biggest chunks that you can take out first before you start getting rid of all these little bits, because some of the little bits and some of the bad scan data down here will go away when you do that. So the first thing I do here is I orient the model so that it is facing, or at least looking the right direction. So if we go to the top, you'll notice that he is looking fairly close to straight front and center. We'll go to left, Now, this is the left side. I don't want the left side. I want it to be in the front. So what we got to do is we got to come in here. We have to hit edit. We're going to hit transform, and we'll go to the top view, knowing that the front view is right there. So we'll go to top view, and you grab that little green handle, and when you come out to these increments on the outside, it'll snap to them. So I can snap it to, like, say 90 degrees if I want, but I can also do a more finesse thing when I'm not on those. So we'll go to about there. Then we'll go to the front view, and we'll notice that his head is sort of tilted off to the side. So let's square the head off a little bit that way. And then finally we'll go to the right view, and you can notice that his head is sort of leaned forward a little bit. So if we're going to try to place this on a desk, it's not necessarily going to work. So let's just tilt it back a little bit so that the center of mass is sort of straight down here. And we're going to accept that. So now we've got him in the right orientation, we're going to do a plane cut. So this will take a flat plane, and it will cut everything. You can see everything sort of grayed out on the bottom, everything below that line. So what we're going to do is we're going to place it somewhere where we want the geometry to cut off. We can say right there, kind of at the shoulders, and that'll be okay. Now, you want the fill type to remesh and fill, and the reason why is that when you do that, it sort of cuts things off and sets things up. Now, actually, this didn't work out as good as I thought, because then we have this sort of weird cutout thing. So I'm going to hit Control Z twice, and that should get us back to where we were. And we need to get rid of sort of that extra data. As much as I want to be able to get rid of it now, it's looking like it's not going to work all that well for me. So hopefully this doesn't take too long. But when we come into the edit, we can also hit separate shells. Now, when you hit separate shells, it's going to go through this entire thing and find out things that if it's attached to the large scan data, it will leave it there. But if it's not, then it's going to break it out into little pieces. So we'll wait and see how this comes, or see if this finishes off properly. This is the part where one gets nervous and wonders if he's actually doing things right, and if the stream is coming through properly. I think it is, but I'm not absolutely sure. So yes, this is where this one takes a little while. Normally when you cut it from the bottom and you trim it off, it works out fairly well. Maybe I just didn't go up high enough to cut out some of the other data, but we will get there in a moment. Let me know if I'm losing anybody or I need to answer any questions. I'm not seeing anything in the chat right now. You know, I was afraid that this sort of thing would happen, where I'd come in and I'd have to sit there and wait for the computer to work. And that's exactly what I'm doing right now. We'll see how this all goes here. It's also one of those, do I shut the machine off or not? It worked last time, but it did take a little while to get all those little tiny triangles. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to shut this down, or I'm going to take the task manager, and I am going to get Meshmixer to end, and we're going to start that again. Be patient with me. This is part of the live thing, right? And we'll go back to screen capture. Yeah, Brian, the AWS cloud sessions would be awesome of Meshmixer. You know, I don't know why, but I find it incredibly hard to say. So let's just import, and we'll go here. We'll go to Richard. It's going to work this time, I swear, people. Okay, so let's make that large. And I'll go quickly through. We're going to go through this. We're going to transform him so that he fits properly. We're going to go top view, but we want to know where the front is. So there's the top. We'll go to about there. Front view, we'll rotate this slightly so his head's square. Right view, rotate back, and we'll say okay. So once you get used to stuff, this is the kind of speed at which you're going to be doing things. And, you know, all things considered, it's pretty decent. Okay, so then we're going to do a plane cut. I'm going to move this up a little further in hopes that it cuts things off the way I wanted it to in the first place. And we're going to accept that. Okay, that's better. So you can see that there's some little weird stuff in there, but the holes aren't as bad. So now, like I was doing before, is I need to come in here and do separate shells. But because I've gotten rid of all that data that was below, the amount of time it takes to separate the shells is going to be way less. So Brian, you're saying the rotations are really smooth. Do you have a hotkey for that? No, it's not a hotkey. I have a device called a Space, let's see, I have the Space Pilot. So it's a 3D mouse that one can use for CAD, and it's separate. So it's on my left-hand side, and I can spin things left or right with this, or up and down and zoom in and out. They are a little expensive, but if you do this stuff, it is massively handy. I think it improved my speed in CAD a huge amount. So can't say enough about these guys. So anyways, save it first. Good point, Brian. So we're gonna do file. You can do a save. I'm just gonna do this as some sort of dummy name so that I don't mess up some of my other work here, but I am gonna place it in the right spot. Now, come in here and you go separate shells, and it's going much faster. I can tell already. It only blinks here. So then this little object browser shows up, and you notice that Richard's head's kind of grayed out. So I'm going to close this down. Normally you have access to that browser, and the way you can get at it is you come in here, you click on View, and you want to show the objects browser. So if you choose that, it shows the main mass of the scan, and all this other stuff is sort of extraneous data. So you can select the first thing under that, hit down or hold down and shift, and it will select the rest of the stuff, and you'll trash it. So now we are left with just Richard's head. And that is something that we can work with for 3D printing. Now, I'm going to show you how to make fix holes and stuff, because this scan worked out really well. But let's just finish this off. So that's sort of like the first few steps. Then I do another plane cut. I'll go to front. I'll rotate that guy around to 90 degrees and pull it out. So it's just going to cut the little shoulder off. And this is also, it fits properly onto a printer. One thing too is that you'll notice that the graduations here are fairly large, and they're not allowing me to kind of get that finesse that I want to. So I'm going to cancel out of this. You can come into Actions, go to Units, and down here it says the grid size at 50. Change that to a smaller number, like say 10. Now, when I do the plane cut, I will have way more finesse on the distance that I have away from something, so I can get in nice and close and tight like that. And we're going to say accept. We'll do another plane cut. We'll rotate it the other way. We'll come out to here. We'll accept. And now we have Richard's head, and it's all watertight, at least for the most part. I actually see that there is a hole here, and there is a way to fix that hole fairly quickly. As you come into analysis, you hit inspector, and you say auto repair all, and that hole, strangely enough, it's hard to see, but it is fixed. So there we go. That's Richard's head. So I'm going to go through one thing on how to hollow out a head. It'd be nice to hollow out Richard's head, given how he was joking with me yesterday, but it also works well with showing how to repair a mesh. So we're just going to say that we're done here. We're going to import, but we're going to use my head this time. And there we go. So this is me, but you'll notice that there's a big hole in my head, and that can be a bit of a problem. And this is where order of operations becomes fairly important. This is where you really got to take sort of the big brush strokes first and then go. See, Brian, you're saying, so let me give me a second here to expand this chat out. You can do a plane cut on just the lower area too by using the select tool, just in case you can't get a clean cut without chopping an ear out. Yeah, I've kind of played with that. I just, that's sort of the way I know how to work with things. So, and yeah, no need to use the tool if the head is already hollow. Yeah, you hear that, Richard? Okay, so let's jump into me here. So again, order of operations, we're gonna go, this is what I want to be the front, and I'm gonna click on top so that I know where the model is. And we're gonna come into edit, transform, we're gonna rotate this around so that I'm facing forward. I'm gonna rotate to the front, and I can see that I'm head's tilted a little off to the side. And then from here, it looks like the alignment straight up and down is fairly good. So we're gonna accept that. Next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna do a plane cut. And, ooh, actually just before I do this, that little square, that white square that I was placing on the scan is right there. And the best way to make sure that you've got things scaled properly is you come into analysis, you wanna come into measure, you wanna choose this type. And I don't know what the word is for it, but that's the 2 circles with a blue line in between. Don't worry about the direction. And what you're going to do here is that when you select on something, you'll notice that there's sort of a red line that's snapped out, and it's kind of weird. Now, let me see here. If I hold down Control and then click and drag, so I'm holding Control and clicking and dragging, it's allowing me to select 2 points on the outside. So remember that the scan is not necessarily all that great. So you need to sort of start at that point there, come out to here, and you'll notice that over here it's telling me that's 50.78. So it's letting me know that I'm definitely within the ballpark of how many millimeters that square is, which means that this is properly squared off and the right size. So then we're going to come back into edit. We're going to do a plane cut. We'll go to the front view, make sure we're not cutting off too much stuff. We're going to accept that. And I'm going to go into actions here. And we're going to change the units again like I did before. So that's 10, so I have a little more finesse. So now we've got all that set up, and I've chopped off the bottom part. But remember how there's always that extraneous data and some of those little mesh pieces. I'm not sure if you can see in here. There are a few like right there. That's the kind of stuff you want to get rid of. So I end up kind of doing this whole separate meshes. I do that a couple of times, or separate shells. So I'll do one separate shell with this, and that will allow me to get rid of all the stuff that came through on the scan data. And now I'm back to just my head. So the next thing I want to do is I want to patch this hole. So we're going to come in here, we want to select, and you'll notice that there's sort of like a giant ball in here. And you can adjust the size of the ball there, but a little trick I recently learned is that if I press and hold the space bar, this dialog shows up, and it allows me sort of right within the context of what I'm working on. It shows me what I'm doing here, or the size of the ball and everything. So it allows me to do a little bit more finesse without having to move the mouse around too much. And then I highlight around that hole. And in this case, what I want to do is I just want to erase. I don't want to erase and fill. I want to discard all that stuff. And then I want to come into edit again, and I want to separate the shells. And then you'll notice that there are a few more of these little valent shells that I want to get rid of. And once I've done that, I can come here. We've got that all set up. We can come into analysis. We can go into the inspector, and we can say how to fill. We want to do like a smooth fill, and we'll auto repair, and it fills in the top of my head. So now we've got a watertight solid or a scan that we can use. So I see Frank is here. It's I'm late. Is this Connect software? I use Connect to do the scan, and then I import it into Meshmixer to do the edit. That way, it's just one of these things where Meshmixer is a tool that I understand, maybe not so much in Connect, and I don't think Connect can let you sort of have this ability to do stuff. So now that we have my head sort of set up, if you just want that and a rough outline of my hair, then that's fine. But what I wanted to do here is we will come into here is I wanted to have this. And this is the bald version of me, but I didn't have to shave my head. I also didn't have to put on a bald cap. Although if you have a bald cap or get a shower cap from Walmart, go do that, do the scan with that on. It will work out better in the end because it leaves you less time that you have to spend on the computer and actually processing the data. So let's just go back to the screen capture. Now, so what I want to do is I want to get rid of my hair so that I'm bald. And what we're going to do is we're just going to come in here. We're going to use the sphere brush like we did before. And we're going to highlight a lot of different, and do this in sections. Don't do this all at once. You don't want to kind of give yourself a flat head. But look at sort of an outline where you can see on that outline, it will level everything out and get rid of that. If we come in here and we do erase and fill, you can see that it gets rid of a lot of that stuff. So our first sort of go at things has gotten us to the point where, let me hit escape, got us to a point where we can use all this stuff. Oh, it's great that I've taught you more about I'm gonna be able to say that one day. Meshmixer. I always like watching other people work because I'd be willing to bet, Brian, that you know a ton of stuff that I don't. So now we've gotten this, I want to make myself bald. And this is where you come into sculpt. You go to brushes, use a shrink smooth is what I found works best. The other one that I use a lot is this robust smooth, but for this case, I want to do a shrink. And the reason why is that I need to sort of shrink the material or where my hair used to be. And then we're going to take the size, and these, the strength and the size, this is really something that you just kind of get in there and play around with. So then we're come in and we're going to, well, let's go to an area like this. You'll notice that it gets rid of that dent and kind of, it's like, think of heat shrink or shrink wrap, saran wrapping. It kind of smooths everything out. So do a rough pass over top of everything and look for the lumpy parts. In my case, there are a lot of lumpy parts on my head. And I'm also know that I'm not an egghead like this, so I want to sort of reduce that little bit, and I'm going to increase the brush size. And again, this is me hitting the space bar, adjusting the brush size, letting go of the space bar. And now with this larger ball, I can start doing some big moves as far as smoothing things out. Let's see. And Brian, you're a professional at crashing it from high poly. Yes, this is one thing too, is there's a lot of people out there I noticed that want to do 3D scans and they want all the detail, they want all the hair, but they don't understand that the computer processing or the computer processors that you need to run that kind of stuff is super expensive, and the chance that you have that as a desktop machine is almost zero. And in the end, I need something that I can make sure that a hat or a cowl or, you know, a costume will fit me. This is more than enough. I don't need to know where my hair follicles are. So we're doing this, just look in there. You know, I can go through and play with this a little bit, but I'm just kind of going by a look, and I can see that my head's a little bulbous here, but not that big a deal. But we're in the final stretch. We've got my head. I go into select. We're going to do a Control A. And then at this point, we're going to do a deform and a smooth. And we don't need it to be that smooth, but we just smooth it out a little bit so that things are good, and you reduce the polygons this way. So now we've got a head, so we'll clear the selection. Now we've got a head that's been smoothed out, is basically me and has all the correct dimensions for me. But I now need to be able to 3D print this. And trying to 3D print this is going to be a super huge pain because, you know, making sure that this is the right size, making sure I have a printer that's the right size. So we're going to go back, we're going to go into edit, and we're going to do a plane cut. So we're going to start dividing my head up. And before I do this, actually, before I do the plane cuts, we're going to make this hollow. Let's assume that my printer, I don't want to do a full solid head. So let's go for like 4mm walls. And let's go up to here. So we got 4mm, so we'll do an offset. And we're just going to kind of accept the defaults. So now the head, if you scooch in here, and right there, you can see that there's a 4mm gap. So there's actually two meshes and everything. So now at this point, I'm going to do a plane cut. I want the head to be hollow. I want to be able to have access through the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to cut off about 4 millimeters. And you'll notice that now I have an empty hollow head, which is perfect for printing, at least the one that I did. And at this point, I need to have different sizes. So this is where plane cut comes in handy. There's different cut types, and you can slice and keep both pieces. So in this case, what I found works really well for my printer, and I just have a Prusa clone, is that for the average head, you need to half it front to back. And we're going to accept that. And you don't really see anything. If you zoom there, you can sort of see a highlight of where that is. But you'll also notice when we do the view and objects browser, it's still only showing one object. So this is going to be a separate meshes thing, but don't do that yet. Do all your cuts first and then separate the meshes. So we're going to go to the front. We'll do a plane cut. I'm going to cut the top of my head off at about there. And again, this is just sort of by guess by golly for a lot of the stuff I do. And it's worked out well for me so far, knock on wood. So the second cut I make will be just below my nose. That way there's going to be less overhangs that I have to worry about. And we'll slice keep both. We'll accept that. And one more plane cut down here at the bottom of my chin. And we'll keep both and we'll accept. So now in theory we've diced all this thing up. So we're going to come into here, we're going to do separate shells. And now you'll notice that I have a neck piece. I have a back neck piece. I have my mouth and part of my ear, back of my head. So all of these pieces are now 3D printable without having to worry about overhangs and everything. So at this point, you select on the object that you want to export. You click on File, you click on Export, and you tell it what you want to call this. Like this would be the mouth and the lower mouth, and make it an STL. And at that point, you can grab it and you can throw it into whatever software you have for stripping the, or for making all the, wow, all the slices. So here, let's just go into here, go to me. I think I did everything for me in here. Actually, you know what? Let's just do this right from the, show you exactly how it goes. So File, Export, we'll also call this 01. We're going to toss this on that desktop so it's easy to find. Then we're going to come into Simplify 3D. We'll go to the desktop. We'll look at 01. And now you have part of my face that I can 3D print with a thin shell that doesn't need any support material and works really well. Now, that's how I got to here. So I printed off all those sections and I glued them together. I'm not sure, yeah, you can see in here. So right there, you can see the lines of the seam lines of where I glued everything together. And what I ended up using for gluing, so a lot of people are talking about CA glue and stuff, and CA works fine, but sometimes you need a little more working time. I wanted to make sure that the edges lined up properly. I ended up using just standard plastic model glue. It takes forever to dry. Keep that in mind, but works with PL really, it's kind of like magic for me. You put things together, you smush it, you kind of tie it down, and then you give it like, 5 hours, 4 or 5 hours, and it locks things down overnight. Then it fully cures, and things seem to be welded together quite well. So that's where I'm at. Got the head, and now I can do stuff. Now let's see. You can print that verbatim about 15% bigger, keep it white, and almost looks like Mike Myers mask. Yeah, okay, that works. The other thing you can do is you can scale it up. So you saw when I did the face offset, is if I took this section here and I scaled it up a little bit, it would actually fit perfectly over my face. And I've done pieces like that. I don't have them here. So you don't necessarily have to make what you need off of this. You might be able to, depending on your 3D modeling skills, be able to make it yourself. Now, that's all I've got for you guys. Thanks for bearing with me and my first live. I think it went well. I stumbled a little bit, but that's all I've got for you. I'll give everybody a few minutes here to see if they have any other questions. I'm going to double check a few things here. see on YouTube and stuff if I've missed anything as far as comments and questions and chat, because it wasn't streaming properly before. Seems to be doing fine there. Hey Jim, if you just showed up, I'm just finishing off. Hopefully that's there's definitely going to be recordings for all of this. Yeah, there's nothing there, and this has been a great system for me to come through and check if everything is working properly. So very much appreciate you coming in and helping out and watching and seeing how everything's going. I will be doing hopefully some more of this stuff. I'm a maker. I design things. I work in the movies doing special effects. I've done like Star Trek, Predator, next Predator coming out, worked on a whole bunch of stuff there, whole bunch of movies. But I like to build things when I have some free time, and hopefully I get a chance to do this here at my desk and show you guys kind of like how I make things. So it's not just going to be 3D printing and masks. It will be paper airplanes. It will be how to make your own video gear. It will be robotics, a little bit of everything. I'm tired of trying to find a channel and do things properly and then keep to a theme. I'm just gonna be me, and this is the stuff I build. Talk to you later.